Alright, good morning. So, real quick, um, I wanted to give you an idea. Like a lot of people that aren't even from the US, when you come to the US or live in the US, there's a lot of double talk when it comes to people who are in government and policymakers and businesses and so on. So, you're not always being told 100% the truth. So, first off, I want to go back and tell you that about Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates were college dorm roommates, and since then have been really close friends. So I want you to really keep that key piece in mind. Now, earlier this year, it came out that Bill Gates had held a meeting, and it was supposed to be a playthrough as if there was a coronavirus outbreak um, that would go worldwide, and they played out the scenario. And this was like I think maybe 2 months before the actual outbreak was even like a thing. So I think like you gotta put pieces together. It's not all about just what you see. You gotta use your intellect and kind of think about this stuff. Now, earlier this year, Trump in the White House Foundation, not the foundation, the White House, it came out and said that the coronavirus um, it was initially planned to be made here in the U.S., but along with Fauci, they moved this project out to Wuhan. Now, there were a lot of stories that came out in the beginning that said there was a lab, and then there wasn't a lab, and that it was a food market that was outside. Well, it turned out all those things were true. There is a food market outside, but there's also a laboratory right there. Now, I want to point out another thing that's kind of interesting. Coronavirus is a common. It's not uncommon at all. It's very common, and it's found in bats. And yes, people eat bats. They eat them a lot, and that that food market did for say sell you know bats. So sure, it could be possible, but probably not as likely. Really, it's not as likely. Because why would it take all this time for this virus to get to us to be an issue if it itself has always been in existence? Now you might think it's just the random combination that created that particular strain. But that's not 100% true. If you actually look online right now to see the different strains that are in the United States right now, it initially did start off as a COVID 19, um, but it had, like, over time, it weakens. It's more likely to weaken itself than it is to make itself stronger, and there's a lot of evidence that backs it as well. And there's at least like 7 different strains that are going through the U.S. right now. You can look them all up. I could try to find the actual link so I could put it in the description for you. But there's that. So back onto what I was talking about with the laboratory. So it is in my research that I found something called the birth dearth. And with the birth dearth, it talks about, for example, Teddy Roosevelt quoted in saying that in order for the Caucasian um, Americans to stay the majority, they need to reproduce at least four children per family, per white family, and to keep abortion rates to at least 60% of black people. What is it at right now? 61%. Is that a coincidence after all this time since Teddy that it's only 1% over what he was saying that it needed to be at? And then on top of that, this third thing that he mentions, you need to close the borders. Now, the borders, it's open, but it's closed. It's like they tell you it's closed, but it's open. People get across all the time. Like the cartel have been seen on video cameras. You've seen the Texas home where they're just walking across. But anyway, back onto my point. It's to my belief that they were hyperinflating all of those death counts because they wanted people to think that COVID 19 was a lot more serious than it actually was. And what helped blow it up was really the fact that it was out there in China. Now, you might be thinking, like, where am I coming from with this? Well, you know that, like, soon after China had blown up, Italy had high numbers. Do you know why that is? It's because there's a factory on the north end of Italy, and it's China. Like they were taking Chinese workers and taking them there. Well, those workers that were coming from China already had COVID, so they brought it to Italy, and then that's when Italy's numbers appeared like it was jacked up. I mean, it eventually, yeah, it started to grow more and more often, but that was just it was a trick, I would say. Um, the next things that I'll mention is that hold on, sorry, the sun was getting a little loud there. But what I what I'm really trying to get at here is that I think that they blew up the numbers to make you think that a lot of people are dying from it, so that when they can push for this vaccine to be brought in, which they're not taking years like they normally would because of all the issues that'll come with it. Um, but they're pushing for this vaccine to come out. So then when this vaccine does come out, and there are laws that are actually in place, and you can look these up in itself, like they're trigger laws that trigger more laws to come up to take away some of your rights and so on. They can force you to get a vaccine. You may think that you can, like they won't, but they can. And on top of that, like you can find there's footage of this happening in South Africa, for example, is when they initially started to force people to take this vaccine. But what you can do is you can check out the MasterCard Wellness Pass. It's a biometric digital footprint linked to your bank card, and your social status. So really, it's going to be like a hologram of you and what you look like. It will have your vaccine history, your medical history, your bank account information, and all of that that's tied to it because they want to try to push for paperless, and they're doing a good-ass job of doing it. And then, that there's the social rating, so that they can control where you can go, what you can do, and all of that. So we're changing the image of what people are, and we're looking at them almost as if they're numbers. Um, but ultimately, like, who do you think is really behind this? Because although I do believe that Fauci and Bill Gates are behind this, I think that there's someone else that might be a little bit up farther on that tier. Like, for example, everyone thought Jeffrey Epstein was a big deal. Well, then there was that Maxwell girl that came out. Well, then on top of her, did you ever hear about Les Wexner? Or, yeah, I think that's his name, Les Wexner. Not only have the FBI raided his home before, and they found a lot of footage and pictures and all of that of like underage kids and stuff like that, which you could find. There's a video that I seen of someone actually recording the FBI inside of his like vault mansion, which is just full of like laptops and all of that, and it's got all of this information on it. They looked at it. No charges had ever been pressed or put against him. Yeah, he stepped down as the Victoria's Secret's chairman, I believe, earlier this year. I never even knew who this guy was, but he's got more money than Trump. Put that one into perspective. You never even hear of this guy. And he's opening up a sexual abuse and exploitation trafficking division at the University of Toledo, which I think is incredibly crazy because not only is Toledo like big for trafficking, like it's like it's tied together. Like it's so crazy. But I want you all to kind of hear this. Take my word for it. Go to the online. I want you to research some of the stuff. Tell me what you find. Tell me what you believe. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think is gonna happen. But keep liking, subscribe. Yeah, catch you on this next one. Peace.